rock and stone!
We're all gonna die!
Nematodes.
Rest up time! We're rich! Hello, darkness, my old friend!
For the last 4 years, I have been absolutely addicted to this one game, Deep Rock Galactic. This might be one of, if not, the best co-op games I've ever played. Look at my hours. Someone take this away from me, please. Apparently, I am not alone though, because after 4 years, it has become Steam's 46th best rated game of all time, with a user rating of 97%, which is fucking crazy because Steam has like 50,000 games on it. If somehow you have not played or heard of this game, or even if you're just on the fence about trying it, then sit down, have a beer, if you are of age, because I am now going to take the next 25 minutes or so to try to tell you why I think you should play the game Deep Rock Galactic. In Deep Rock Galactic, you play as one of 4 dwarf miners, each with their own distinct weapons and abilities. Your goal is to traverse through different kinds of procedurally generated caves and to mine and gather the shit out of everything your grubby little hands can find. Gold, pearls, pretty flowers, hanging testicles.
The company wants them, don't ask why.
But all while you're doing this, these alien bugs are trying to stop you. And these range from these basic spider boys, to these big spitting guys, to these flying dickheads who will grab you and carry you up high before dropping you to your death. And while the bugs are always just hanging around the caves, at certain points Mission Control gets on the comms to tell you,
Quick! Get out! Get out of here!
as a wave of enemies will soon be coming. And this is the part where you have to pour endless bullets into the enemies so that you can survive and continue your mission. Once you complete your quota of mineral gathering and depositing, you call in an escape pod to pick you up, which is essentially the get to the chopper moment where you all make a mad dash to get extracted. And that's pretty much it. But not before everyone yells,
That's it, lads! Rock and stone! Did I hear a rock and stone?
So what makes this game so worth playing that I make a long ass video about it? Well, Deep Rock has been referenced a few times now by the devs as Left 4 Dead meets Minecraft. The Left 4 Dead elements they're referring to are things like fighting against tons of enemies with a team of 4 people with a heavy emphasis on cooperative gameplay, while the Minecraft elements are things like exploring underground caves, mining for minerals and such in a space that is completely destructible. I would even add that the shooting here reminds me a lot of games like Halo or even Doom to an extent, and that's mostly because of the way it feels when you kill enemies in this game.
Oh yeah.
It's very satisfying. The shooting here is just mwah. Every enemy is just really fun to shoot. And the way they crunch or snap or freak the fuck out as their goose sacks empty when they die is just so great. And reminds me a lot of those games. And while these are the core elements that make up this game, there are lots of other things that were added to this mix that make it its own thing completely. Dwarfs. It stands for dwarfs. And they also added a mission-based structure. What I described earlier was mostly a basic mining mission in the game. In these, you're just trying to find and mine a certain amount of morkite. In every mission type, you'll also have to be on the lookout for nitra, since it lets you call down supply pods to refill your health and ammo, and gold that lets you buy stuff back in the hub area. But aside from the mining missions, there are 7 other mission types you can pick from. Egg hunt is pretty self-explanatory. Go find egg. When you find them though, you have to dig them out of these disgusting wall things, with some of them occasionally triggering swarms of enemies, since you're essentially stealing their babies. Point extraction is similar, but instead of having the mule that usually accompanies you in missions, you find and bring these big gems back to a cool mining platform. Salvage operations has you seeking out and repairing these little mini mules, and then defending things like fuel cells to get an old drop pod working again. You know, since the previous team died. Escort duty is also about defense, but really changes up the main formula. You get to ride a big bulldozer named Doretta, repairing it and refueling it as you go, and then defending it as it busts for this big ass gem at the end, where you'll get to fight the aptly named enemy, Flying Rock. Elimination is more focused on the fighting aspect, and has you seeking out and taking down these big boss enemies called Dreadnoughts, which come in a variety of different flavors. As such, they must also be fought in different ways, but you don't know which one is in it until you pop it open. Industrial Sabotage is the newest mission type they've added, and has you starting off by hacking and defending these little robots, and then puts you against the Caretaker, which is probably the coolest fight in the game, and can actually get kind of hard. The final one, and my personal favorite, is the on-site refining missions, and these are just so damn fun. In these ones, you have to find and call down 3 different pump jacks, and then build these pipes out to them from a refinery. Afterwards, you start the pumping sequence, and throughout it, enemies will sporadically break the pipes that you'll have to go and repair. But you get to do all of this while riding the pipes. It's like that scene from Zombieland when he's on the roller coaster, but you get to make the roller coaster. And while this mission type is clearly best girl, pretty much all the missions you can pick from are enjoyable overall, and are pretty different from one another. After a bit of playing, you also get access to these things called deep dives, which are 3 consecutive missions one after another, and are fun as hell because everything carries over between missions, so you have to pay more attention to things like your health and your ammo count.
Minus, you're doing well so far. Management sends their regards.
Additionally, when you go to select a mission, there might even be a mutator added to it that changes some of the fundamental gameplay. Like this one's called Haunted, and that might make you think, ooh,
It's spooky.
but no, this big deadly, slightly invisible fucker just follows you around everywhere, and you can't kill him.
Oh no, don't run away.
What I find really cool though, is that while one of every mission type is always available to play, they're constantly on a rotation with the many different regions in the game, changing randomly every half hour. And this essentially forces you to try out the many different regions the game has to offer, but in doing so helps keep it from feeling repetitive. If you're like me and you just want to keep playing the pipe missions, playing them in the sandblasted corridors is a lot different from playing in the dense biozone, both because of the different kinds of enemies and the hazards that are thrown at you, and just how the procedurally generated terrain is formed. These regions all have specific kinds of layouts when they generate. So the sandblasted caves will usually have huge open areas, while the biozone ones will typically have these crazy structures littered throughout them. There's currently 10 of these regions, and they're all very different and unique, and for the most part, enjoyable to play in, well, apart from a few outliers.
That is fucking disgusting.
They're not all the same difficulty-wise though. As I mentioned, they have different kinds of hazards within them, and these pretty much dictate how difficult they are to play in. Like you've got your basic bitches. The Crystalline Caverns is a good example. It's got these cool lighting crystals that'll chain together and will fuck you up if you get too close, but not much else. Then there's your mid-tier regions. A little challenging, but manageable. The Glacial Strata is a good example of this, having snowstorms that can mess up your vision, cracks that open up in the ground, and heavy snow that will slow your movement, amongst other things. And this might sound like a lot of stuff going on, but yeah, I'd say this one fits right in the middle of the pack difficulty-wise. If you really want a challenge, then you can take a trip to the Magma Core where absolutely everything is trying to kill you. Huge geysers of fire, small geysers of fire, earthquakes, burning pathways, and these fucking exploding flower things. And these are all just some examples of how different the caves themselves can get. Aside from the many regular enemy types that you'll fight in this game, many of the regions even have specific creatures that are completely unique to them, like these sand shark things that'll fuck you up if they manage to grab you, and are only found in the Sandblasted Corridors region. I said creatures rather than enemies before, because a lot of the wildlife you'll find in this game isn't hostile. Most of them are just hanging around the caves, doing their thing. And going through the different regions, discovering and finding out which creatures will and will not kill you is fun in itself. So because of that, I don't want to talk too much about the enemies in this game. I think you should find out for yourself what most of them do. So far, when you take into account the mission type, the possible mutators, the region, and the fact that all the caves are procedurally generated, you already have a recipe for endless replayability. And this is just picking a mission. But what also really affects how you play are these guys. And the classes you can pick from in Deep Rock are great because they all feel necessary. If I'm ever in a game of 3 people, I'm like, fuck, I wish we had that 4th class so I don't have to dig through this small bit of dirt like some peasant. All of them have their own weapons, grenades, and utility tools, although I'd rather call them traversal tools since they help the dwarfs move around the caves. The gunner is kind of like the heavy weapons guy from Team Fortress 2, and he wields big ass guns that just tear shit up. He's got some cool sidearms, one of which is a very fun and crunchy revolver, and of his 3 grenade options, his cluster grenade is my favorite since it's great for clearing out lots of enemies at once, and also hurting himself. Most importantly though, he stole Master Chief's Halo 3 bubble shield, which paired with his high damage output makes him essential for keeping the team alive. His traversal tool is a deployable zipline, which is used for transporting the entire team from one section of the cave to another, be it higher or lower terrain. The Engineer is kind of like the Engineer from Team Fortress 2, and his weapons are probably the most varied amongst the classes. From a shotgun, to a grenade launcher, to his smart rifle which automatically locks onto enemies.
It's high noon.
His main gimmick is that he can deploy 1 or 2 turrets depending on how you customize them, which are really great for thinning out enemies. And of his 3 grenades, his lure is pretty notable since it distracts the bugs with a little dance. Finally, his traversal tool is the platform gun, which can be used to break your fall, fill in holes, create steps, or even make bridges that defy gravity. I think the Scout is kind of like the Scout from Team Fortress 2, and his weapons mostly consist of rifles, with his first one being something you'd find in any generic first-person shooter. His sawed-off shotgun secondary more than makes up for that in my opinion though. The only grenade of his you'll ever need to use is his cryo one, since it does this to flying enemies. And while every dwarf can throw out small flares to light things up a bit, the Scout additionally has a flare gun that is essential for lighting up big areas. And at this point you might be thinking, the Scout sounds kinda basic, which to that I would say,
Grappling hook!
Fair enough.
Scout's grappling hook allows him to reach pretty much any area in the game, and can be even used to break his fall, which makes no fucking sense, but I really like it as a game mechanic. Of all the traversal tools though, the Scout's is the most selfish in that it's only for him. While the rest of the team is just slowly walking through the cave, the Scout's just like,
Don't say it. Don't you say it. Left. Come on!
I don't really have a Team Fortress 2 parallel for this one, but I think I'm gonna have to go with the Pyro because they're both fucking crazy.
Water. Earth. Fire. Air.
The Driller's weapons are pretty neat in that they all kind of have this weird elemental thing going on. I don't think this was on purpose though, because one of the last guns they added for him was like shit or something, which I guess I'm counting as an element. He's got throwable axes, which I think say enough on their own, and his traversal tool is his drills, which can dig through literally anything. Well, everyone can dig, he just does it a lot faster. He's also jokingly known throughout the community as the team killing class, since he also has satchel charges that are great for killing bugs, but also consistently down both him and his teammates. What's interesting is that people seem to like all of the classes pretty evenly. I personally think Gunner is the most fun to play since he's very team oriented, and while he's apparently the least favorite of the four, it's not by much. This is great because if everyone likes all of the classes evenly, they're more likely to fill the missing role in a game of 4 people. And I've definitely noticed this. While you can set a game rule that forces players to pick a class that isn't already in use, a lot of people just leave it off so you can be whoever you want. You can double up on classes, or even be a bunch of jackasses with a full team of engineers if you want an army of turrets. But almost always do people just end up filling the missing roles anyways because all of the classes are just that fun to play. It also works much better for team composition when you do have all of the abilities each class has to offer, since they all pair with one another in different ways. And this is kind of important in a cooperative class-based game. And by far one of the best things about this game is its heavy emphasis on co-op. Earlier, I mentioned how this game has been compared to Left 4 Dead, which is obvious. 4 characters fighting stuff, standing in a cool group pose together.
I mean, come on.
But aside from the basics, both Left 4 Dead and Deep Rock have something that's embedded in their cooperative gameplay. And I couldn't actually find a term for this, but I would call it
Enforced co-op.
But what is enforced co-op? Well, I've just noticed it from playing too many games, but I would say it's when a game creates situations or has gameplay elements that force or encourage players to not play like this,
Fuck you! You fuck you! I will fucking kill you!
but like this. Like take Borderlands 2 as an example of a game I'd say doesn't have a ton of enforced co-op. Yeah, it's a really fun co-op game, but the only thing that makes the game cooperative is that you're doing missions together, you're fighting the same enemies, and that you can't directly hurt one another. Well, except for when somebody's playing as Krieg where it's encouraged. And yes, this is how most co-op games work. But what I mean by that is that nothing else is really forcing or enforcing you to work together. In Borderlands, I can go complete one mission across the map, while my friend does a completely separate one, and the only thing that might occur is one of us dying, but even then I can just respawn on my own and continue on my merry way. Contrary to this is Left 4 Dead, which uses tons of enforced co-op. Like, the special infected zombies in those games all use their abilities to capture and separate individual players from the group. The only way to free a captured player in Left 4 Dead is to either push the zombie away or straight up kill it. The player that is being attacked is completely incapable of freeing themselves and so must rely on others for help. And this idea also goes for everything else in that game. Helping survivors up, giving other players health, or having everyone focus on the tank so that it doesn't wipe the whole team. And all of these things, while optional for the player, help ensure the survival of the entire team. And this kind of team-based gameplay is also found a lot in Deep Rock. In some caves, these things called cave leeches hang from the ceiling, and if you get within a certain radius, they'll snatch you up. Just like in Left 4 Dead, another player must help you or you'll go down. And while not all the enemies have abilities like this, quite a few of them do. There's even an enemy that functions a lot like the tank, in that it can randomly appear at any time and wipe your team if you don't all focus on it. Aside from the enemies enforcing you to work together, there's also lots of other small things that do too. Like when carrying heavy things, you can toss and catch them between each other, making the work go faster. If an engineer sets a turret down, Any class can help build it, and other engineers can help refill its ammo when low. At the end of a mission, everybody makes the same amount of money, so there's never a reason for anyone to get greedy and try to mine more than other players. And to elaborate more on that, wait, how does any of this actually make the game better? Well, Jimmy, if you'd wait 1 fucking second, I'd explain it to you. Okay? Can you wait 1 fucking second? Great. It's because this is a cooperative game, and all of this stuff makes it more cooperative. The game wants you to work as a team, helping each other up, pointing out help for those who need it, and just utilizing the different classes to succeed together. Do I have to explain why this is fun? So many games that revolve around co-op are like,
Gentlemen, lock and load.
and then it's actually like, stop. I have the ray gun! In Deep Rock, you're constantly having these small, meaningful interactions with other players, which I almost never find in games anymore. In one game I had, the mutator made it so that we had limited oxygen and had to go to the mule every so often to refill it so that we didn't suffocate. At the end of a mission, the mule goes to the drop pod on its own, and you're supposed to follow it, but we got lost on the way and in turn lost our supply of oxygen. So we all started going down one after another, but were able to continuously revive each other, essentially making a dwarf chain of downing and reviving that allowed us to slowly move towards the drop pod and make it out with like 5 seconds to spare. I cannot describe to you what I felt in this moment. I'll try though, it felt really good. Winning as a team genuinely feels great in this game. And the best part is when you do succeed as a team, the game rewards you. At the end of a mission, the whole team gets a bonus for every surviving dwarf, and while it's not a crazy amount of money, it encourages you to help your team make it to the drop pod alive. Whenever you do finish a mission, you end up back here in the hub area, and this is where you do all of your customizing, picking your cosmetics, and upgrading your dwarfs and their weapons. Doing so lets you enhance stuff like making your scout's grappling hook reach further, or giving your driller's satchel charges a bigger explosion radius. Wait, and these are just the basic upgrades. After playing for a while, you get access to these things called overclocks that radically change how your weapons work. The hardcore players are really into these, trying to find the best builds for each class and stuff. Honestly though, I just pick whatever sounds neat. Like I put this one on my driller's shitty little sidearm that makes enemies explode when I reload, and that's pretty damn cool. When you get these though, you still have to use the currency to fully unlock them for use. So you kinda have to choose sometimes. Do I want a cool overclock that will decimate my enemies? Or do I want a neat hat? And for me, this decision is obvious. The cosmetics here are some of the best I've ever seen in a video game. Even the cosmetic DLC packs are great, which are the only form of purchasable DLC by the way. And even without it, there's tons of stuff here. Enough that you can even try to make cheap knockoffs of other characters.
I need a weapon.
Boy.
Beards, mustaches, hats, armor sets, skins, gun skins, pickaxe parts, and skins. Dumb fucking victory poses for your guy to do when you beat a mission. It's like a Banjo collectathon, but it's actually worth it. And you get this stuff from everywhere. You can use your in-game money to buy stuff in the shop, you can randomly find these crates or the packs of fallen dwarves in caves that'll give you stuff. There are tons of seasonal items that you can get just by playing at certain times of the year, and there's even a cosmetic progression tree that was added in one of the last big updates. And the best part about having this much variety in the cosmetics is that you rarely come across someone else with a dwarf like yours. I've seen so many different players with their own unique looks that it really makes you feel like your specific dwarf is just one of many who work at this company. And this is what completes the gameplay loop, for me at least. I go fight bugs and mine shit and level up, and I do it all to get a Russian hat for my guy. But this doesn't have to be how you play. There's always something to work towards in this game. And all of this is definitely more fun to do with friends, but it can all be done completely by yourself in single player too. The cool thing is that in single player, the game gives you this little robot buddy named Bosco, who is both customizable and honestly probably the best teammate you can have in this game. You can point him at whatever and he'll mine it, or kill it, or build it for you. Bosco for life. And I actually find I get a really different experience playing solo compared to co-op. Co-op is kind of loud and crazy, but in a good way.
Rock and stone!
While playing solo is a lot more quiet, slow-paced, and even serene at times. And I do like playing it solo because of this, but it's very clear this game was made to be played with other people, and that you'll probably have a better experience if you do. When you do want to play with others, you'd usually just ask your friends, but sometimes those friends are busy, or never existed to begin with. And that's where the server browser comes in. The server browser is how you can find and play with other people you don't know in this game. And the cool part is that when you go to select a game in progress, it gives you all the info you might need, like mission type, difficulty, as well as the number of players players already in the game and what classes they all are. This makes it very easy to just pull it up and jump into a game of your liking. Like here I saw this guy was playing alone as a gunner, so I decided to join up with him so that he'd have a teammate. Almost instantly after I got in though, did 2 more players land right next to me one after another, giving us a full team of 4. And I've experienced this quite a lot. Firstly, the game has been selling very well, so the player base is always increasing, which is great. And second, I honestly assume these guys also joined because they saw the gunner was alone. And yes, that sounds very fucking cheesy and unbelievable, but I truthfully think they did. And I think this because the community around this game might be one of the kindest, most welcoming ones I've ever seen in a video game. In the 4 years I've been playing, I may have only run into about 2 or 3 people who were genuine dickheads. For comparison, I run into a dickhead in every game of Overwatch, so those odds are pretty good. Everyone's just so damn nice. Why are you being so fucking nice to me? Someone's always asking if the whole team is ready to leave a mission or start an event or whatever. You don't even have to talk to anyone either. There's a feature in the game that lets you point out literally anything and your dwarf will say whatever it is, so you can usually communicate what you want just by using this. Another way to convey something is by yelling
Rock and stone!
And this is essentially a cheer that you can yell out at any time while you play. Usually everyone just spams it at the end of a mission because you, well, won. But I've had games where we get destroyed, and when we spawn back in, we all just yell it anyways because it was still fun. The game director said that they wanted to have some sort of cheer for the dwarfs so that the players could acknowledge each other. And this has worked perfectly for that. I've never seen a game become so linked with a phrase before. Well, maybe except for that butthole one from Elden Ring. And it does an amazing job of giving this sense of camaraderie that you're supposed to feel playing this game. And over the course of this game's life cycle, they've added tons of variations for this specific quote through many of their updates.
For those about to rock and stone, we salute you.
And I think one of the biggest things that have kept myself and others consistently coming back to this game are the numerous big updates they've had over the years. What this game looked like 4 years ago versus what it looks like now are wildly different. Originally, these updates would be quite frequent, happening every few weeks or so. Some new cosmetics in the store to buy, a new enemy might be implemented. Even the first big chunky updates that introduced new regions or missions were still within a 1-month span from each other, which is kind of crazy given how much these added to the game. And they kept this update schedule pretty consistent until a 4-month gap occurred between update 24 and 25. The reason being that update 25, titled Endgame Part 1, was filled with tons of stuff that new players might find hard to believe wasn't in the game to begin with. And they kind of continued on like this, having small frequent updates or large but spread out ones until update 35, where they decided to do away with the random updates every so often and would go on to release what they called Season 1, which dropped even more free stuff. The devs also said that this is how they're going to be giving players new content going forward, which is completely fine because, again, and I can't stress this enough, it's all been completely free. If you go back and look at the 8 mission types in the game, over half of them were added after it became available to play. And that alone should tell you how the devs have gone about supporting this game. It's clear that the developers also really do listen to their community in relation to these updates, even for the small stuff. Originally, the bulldozer Doretta would just be left behind in the caves after a mission, but all the robots in this game have little personalities, so players felt bad about leaving her behind. So, the devs updated the game so that you could bring her head back after a mission. It doesn't even give you any XP or money or anything, it's just a fun thing to do. And this was implemented because the community asked for it. And it's the little things like this that really make this game shine. And I'd say that the devs have perfected the craft of little things. By that, I mean there is so much specific small detail stuff to find in this game.
Look at him go!
Stuff that you might not know about even after 4 years of playing, like these deployable scoreboard things and a ball that I just found in a hidden spot in the hub area. Apparently these have been in the game since last year. You can slap the dice on your way into the drop pod, you can tip the bartender, and if you can somehow kick a hammer into this barrel kicking minigame, it says hammer time. None of this actually affects the main gameplay in any way, they're just fun things to do. The game constantly has you going, oh, what's this? What's that? Hey, I didn't know I could do that.
Oh, I'm never gonna get used to this.
And as you play and they gradually update the game more, you'll only find even more of this kind of stuff. I mentioned a lot earlier that all the different regions in this game have different creatures exclusive to them. In one of them, these passive manta ray guys can be found flying around just doing their thing. The difference with these ones though is that they're actually interactable. You can press a button that lets you grab onto them and then fly them around. What's amazing though is that, like the sand shark enemies, these guys are exclusive to this one region. Now, the exclusive enemies make a lot of sense. They're hostile to the player, so they'll actively seek them out. These guys are passive, so they just fly around and don't really care that you're there. So because of this, you don't even really need to interact with them unless you want to. And while it's fun to fly around and access the higher areas in the cave easily, sometimes you're the scout and you don't need to. What I'm saying is that this one game mechanic is hiding away in just one of the 10 available areas. They had to look up what a manta ray looks like, spore the hell out of it, probably do like 30 other game developer steps, and then implement it in a very small section of their game where people are just gonna blow it the fuck up, because while it's neat, it doesn't really affect the main gameplay that much. And that's fucking awesome. I feel like this one creature sums up exactly how the devs approached making this game, to focus on the very small details of everything that was put into it, making it so that the player is constantly finding new things and having these different experiences. I have watched videos of the devs talking about this game, and clearly they have put their heart and souls into it. There are even some old videos of some of them working at PressPlay, a studio that Microsoft shut down back in 2016. And in some of those videos, they're working on a game that looks an awful lot like this one. Obviously, this game, Project Dwarka, became Deep Rock Galactic.
My grandpa told me they used real mules back in the day, keeping up the tradition.
And I think it's kind of amazing that it was able to survive a game studio closing down and essentially being resurrected by the 6 or so employees who left to start their own company. What's crazy is that I've only begun to scratch the surface of what this game has to offer, because there's just too much to cover in it. Literally, while I was making this video, they released the second season called Rival Escalation, so obviously none of that's been covered here. But this is probably a good thing, because I think you should see for yourself all of this new stuff and everything else I didn't get to talk about. And hopefully it'll make you feel that same sense of wonder and discovery that I first felt seeing it. Final notes, soundtrack is fucking banging. It's super eerie and it fits the game perfectly. Literally just go listen to the soundtrack and it might make you want to play this game. And they've actually done so well that they're making a board game based on this game, so you can play it on your table much more slowly.
Let's see what this, I want to see if this is one of the flowers we want to pick up or something else good. Let's see, maybe it's another loot box? No, it's an Apoca Bloom.
And I am very excited. And that's it. Get some friends together and go play this game. Kill some bugs, mine some gold, drink some beers, and pass out drunk just to do it all again. Because this game is probably one of, if not, the best co-op games I've ever played. And that's why I think you should play the game Deep Rock Galactic.
To take your gold. Dark and dirt is what we know. Deep in rock is where we go. I rock for breakfast. Tunnel deep, I tunnel long. All the while I'll sing this song. Dirt to shift and bugs to hit. I wouldn't trade any of it. Bugs that fly and bugs that crawl in the air and on the wall. Lemon, acid, shell and bone. Watch that ball dead for she blows. I've lived like a dwarf, and I'm gonna die like a dwarf. Over rock and stone, bend your backs to take your gold. Dark and dirt is what we know. Deep in rock is where we go.